access to them.
Yeah.
It made it really easy. The board process was like aerial
6
images.
o'clock.
Really not the best when it comes to
Okay, so I would like to call to order the March 11th, 2025 Planning Board, Auburn, Maine Planning Board, and I will start with the first item on the agenda, which is roll call, and I'll start with my left, please.
Riley Bergeron.
Bob Hayes,
Paul Jacques.
Stacy LeBlanc.
Darren Finnegan, Tim DeRoche.
Maureen Hopkins.
And we do have an associate member, Ed Bear. He is absent today. So the next item on the agenda are the minutes. So I would seek a motion to approve the minutes, or if there is an amendment, go ahead.
Yep. There's a Riley Bergeron instead of Riley Bergeron in the one of the first things. Other than that, it looked pretty good.
In the, how they spelled your name? Oh, I see that, okay. Yeah, so Riley's name was spelled incorrectly in the meeting minutes. So if we can make an amendment to the meeting minutes, that would be great to have a correct spelling of Riley's last name. Okay, other than that amendment to the meeting minutes, any other ones? Okay, seeing none, I would seek a motion to approve the meeting minutes.
So moved.
Do you have a second?
Second.
All those in favor? Excellent. Motion carries. Okay, the next item on the agenda, which is, I think, kind of exciting and different, is the planning board to hear and be introduced to a student representative who is interested in being a student representative on the planning board. So I'll kind of pass it over to staff in terms of hearing about this individual and next steps.
Yes, so the planning board is unique where you have a member that is a student representative and you appoint them yourselves instead of having the council appoint them. And he is here tonight. His name is Adolph, and he can come up and introduce
Sure,
himself.
absolutely.
I feel.
Sure. I mean, feel free to come forward if you'd like to introduce yourself, say a little bit about yourself, your background, your interest in the board.
Oops, sorry. Good evening. My name is Ngengele Adolph. I go to EL, and I'm involved in many activities at EL. I am currently the class president for my class of 2026, and I like to be involved in the community, and that's why I want to be part of the student board, student representative board.
Excellent. Thank you. Any questions? Great. Okay. So I see on the agenda that the request is for us to vote for an appointment.
Yes, and if you appoint him tonight, we have the city clerk here as well, and she can swear him in so he can participate in the rest of the meeting as a member.
Okay. So I would look for a motion. Or
I make a motion to accept the student representative appointment.
Seconded.
all those in favor? Okay, motion carries. And I don't think we have his name necessarily on the so I think I think Riley would have actually mentioned it. So perfect.
You'll raise your right hand and repeat after me.
I, Adolph,
Do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
and of this state,
and of the state,
so long as I shall remain a citizen thereof,
so long as I remain a citizen of,
and that I will faithfully discharge,
and that I will faithfully discharge,
to the best of my abilities,
to the best of my
the
ability,
duties incumbent upon me
the duties incumbent upon me,
as student advisory representative
student advisory representative
of the Planning Board,
of the Planning Board,
according to said constitutions,
according to said Constitution,
the
the
laws of this state,
laws of the state,
and ordinances of the city.
and ordinance of the state.
And if you will just write your name there.
Excellent.
And this is a copy of
Get ready for some pretty fascinating stuff. All right, so the next item on the agenda is a capital improvement plan. So I believe we have City Manager here, Phil Crowell, to provide us with the plan.
Great. Thank you, Madam Chair and Board. Thank you for this opportunity to come before you. Based on city ordinance, as we work through our capital improvement plan, the stop that I make prior to going before the city council is to the planning board. And this is an opportunity to hear feedback from you on our projects that we have going forward. It's a good opportunity for you to know what's being planned in the future, not just this year, but what we have allocated, or at least identified rather, for our 5-year CIP plan, and then what I'll be proposing in this year. So you should have a handout for both of those items, the 5-year and then the FY26 bond sheet. And before we jump into that, I just want to share a little bit about some other infrastructure projects that we have going on, just so you have an idea of the breadth of all the initiatives that we have currently. We have several facilities that are either under construction, being designed, or being planned and thought out for the city currently. Most of you know we have the public safety facility that is currently in design phase, and it's currently being costed out by our contractor, which is Allied Construction. We should be hearing those numbers and going back to the Public Safety Committee, Building Committee, within the next 2 weeks. They should be getting those numbers. Part of our process for the public safety facility was the need for us to move that project in one phase rather than 2 phases. And to do that, we needed to find a new home for the fire department. And so we identified that with a building that became available on Kitty Hawk, 67 Kitty Hawk facility came available. We executed our first refusal right that we have within the air park through the airport to purchase that building. For immediate need of the fire department, we'll be shifting fire services there, not rescue, but fire. Part of that process is actually now changing all the run cards for fire, so we're shifting the call volumes so that we still have a good response time from our fire apparatuses. And the rescue units will actually, during the building of the facility, will operate out of the Engine 2 facility, which is located on South Main Street in New Auburn, and that will actually be the new building. That building is currently completed design, being prepared for construction. Hopefully this spring is the timeline for that new facility. That facility, we're estimating somewhere around $8.4 million for that building. And you'll see that in your FY26 CIP. That's the last phase of the funding for that project. We've broken that out over the last 2 years. So it wasn't one large hit in 1 year. We didn't bond out a full amount, have to pay interest on that full amount if we didn't need it each of those years. So we've been using the funding that we've allocated to do the design and start doing some of the work. So Kitty Hawk will be retrofitted for the fire station, for Central Fire, but then when the new public safety building is in place, we'll actually be shifting fire out, but we'll be moving public works in. So our public works operation will now be on both ends of the city, which will be extremely beneficial. We spend a lot of time driving our apparatus, public works apparatus, all the way out to the Gracelawn site when they're doing a job in outer South Auburn. Having an additional site would be beneficial. For those of you who know our infrastructure buildings within the city, most of these were built late 60s, early 70s. None of our facilities have proper bathrooms, showers, locker rooms, accessibility. If you go to the Public Works facility on Gracelawn, you'll know to get to the office. It's a maze to get up to that office. Next thing you know, you're in their lunchroom as you're trying to find your way to get to the office. No elevator, all stairs, not accessible. And so when we move the operation, Public Works operation, to Kitty Hawk, that'll be the headquarters. That's where the public would go. That's where the administrative staff will be. There will also be enough space there for laydown materials. We'll have a second salt shed that will be there for our trucks that go out. They'll be dispatched out of that area as well, so that our entire, right now we run about 21 plow trucks. They will not all be operating out of Gracelawn. We'll break that out between the two locations. So Kitty Hawk is actually saving us money on the only doing one phase on the public safety facility, but it's also saving us funds for what we would have had to put into Gracelawn because we would have needed to really build a new building at Gracelawn. With this change, we won't need to do that. We're saving, between the two of those, we'll probably save close to $5 million by this purchase. We purchased that building with fund balance dollars. We did not bond it, and so we own that building outright. And so I think it was a good financial move for the city. Council responded in a good way to make that happen and allows us to move forward with these projects. We also have, I mentioned Engine 2, that hopefully will be starting this spring. The PAL Center is a $9 million project that we're currently moving forward with. The PAL Center project, as you know, went before you for approval, but that is on track to be ready for operation in July. And so the contractor there, Landry French, has been doing a great job with that project. We're excited about it. It's moving really well. And so a lot of good things happening for that neighborhood. We also were able to acquire 7 Chestnut Street. This was a building that was beyond really repair. I think 30 years ago when I came on the city as a patrol officer, I remember going in that building thinking, who lives here? This is not a great facility building for our public, and it had only gotten worse over the years. And so it really needed to be dealt with. And so the city was able to negotiate a deal with the current owner. We were able to demo that building. That's a hazardous site anyway. That building, actually, prior to that apartment being on that site, it was a dry cleaner. And so there's hazardous material in the grounds that get tested annually. And so what we'll be doing is we'll actually be removing that building and then turning that into a parking lot that will serve the PAL Center and serve the sports fields and activities in the PAL Center area. So much better use for that space, and will provide great access for the public to be able to go there. The other project that we're in the middle of is 121 Mill Street. This is a building that we purchased a few years ago when it became available. We were exploring the use for that building, and we will be currently our community business and community development staff are housed at 95 Main Street. We have about 10 employees, but we also have somewhere around 6 or so partnership staff that might work for, say, Rumford Housing, who provides housing in the area, or Community Concepts. Other organizations are embedded in there with our team that provide social service needs for our community. We'll be moving that team out to 121 Mill Street. Also in 121 Mill Street, on one side of the building, it is the day center for the drop-in center for the community. So our homeless community, they go there on Wednesdays and Saturdays currently, and services are provided. We have housing navigators that are there. We have other service providers that go in, and they meet with them on a regular basis at that location. So that's what 121 Mill Street has become, and providing good services for our community. And but that project is underway just to retrofit that building. We're somewhere around $1.5 million, not a little more, by the time we finish the 2 phases There'll probably be a third phase later regarding the parking lot and some of the other work that needs to be done on that project. One of the congressional funding awards that we have, while we've been approved, is at committee level has been an extension of the water and sewer lines within the community. We identified Outer Broad Street, Outer South Main as areas where if we were going to look for additional housing, that would be the area that makes sense. And so now how do we bring utilities out through that area? Well, we applied for congressional earmark funds of about $8 million. And that was approved through committee. And if you've been watching anything that's taking place in DC, it doesn't really mean a lot right now. So we're in a holding pattern to see whether or not we'll see congressional, what used to be earmark funds, continue. And so, so it's been approved through committee. We'll wait and see if we actually receive those funds. That'll be a great infrastructure project for us as we continue to seek areas where we can grow our housing. And,
Can I just ask you a question? How did you guys identify, I mean, I agree with you, Broad Street and South Main Street, but how did you guys identify it versus like other areas that probably needed a little bit more density with like water and sewer?
Yeah, well, some of it had to do with some of the projects that have already been approved through planning and has been sitting there for years, but not having that infrastructure available, developers haven't moved on it. And so, and some properties that the city owns, and how does that tie into those projects? Eric might be able to weigh in a little bit more on those.
Yeah, I think the other driver was the comprehensive plan update. Those are areas that are on the fringes of where we already have water and sewer, but the comp plan was calling for significantly more density in form-based code districts mostly, and those were areas where there was a logical extension. I think the Broad Street one also helps us potentially achieve some of the vision around Washington Street because it starts to loop some of those utilities back to Washington Street.
I agree with you. I just wasn't sure kind of.
Yeah.
Yep.
No, great question. Yep. The last one I think I'd highlight is one that we did receive award for, and that's nearly $4 million for the Littlefield Dam removal. And that's been one that we've probably applied, I don't know, Eric, but several years. I don't know if you want to talk about that a little bit, Eric.
Sure, yeah, I think there was at least 3 applications over 5+ years, working closely with the Conservation Commission and the councils at the time. But we did receive that funding. We have requested services for engineering, design, permitting for that. We had an RFP out for about a month. We've narrowed it down to 2 contractors. We're interviewing those over the next couple of weeks and expect the design for that will start this summer and construction or removal of the dam in 2026. That'll restore fish passage all the way from the ocean up through Auburn, as the 2 dams below this dam that's being removed also are required to provide fish passage under their license by 2032, I think.
So that's close to $88 million worth of projects that staff is currently working through at one level or another. So when you look at our capital projects, we're mindful of what we're taking on because we want to make sure we have the capacity to be able to execute these. A lot of these, other than the public safety building, did come through congressional earmark funds, ARPA funds, and or previous capital funding that was allocated for these projects. But that's a big lift for staff, and so timing on these are critical. We're looking at that, how we maneuver these projects. Our 911 center is tied to the facility on Maine Avenue. Timing on that project is important. We're working with the city of Lewiston on that initiative to make sure that that all aligns well with when we start this project and how we move forward with it. Currently, we've already drawn down $5 million. If you recall, the public, through a referendum vote, passed up to $45 million for the public safety building. We've already drawn down about $5 million to go towards some of our costs. Currently, we'll be trying to, part of that was purchasing a building, part of that was the architectural fees, design fees, and then getting our drawings to a level to come before you, and then also providing some site work. We also received about $2.5 million in congressional earmark funds for public safety as well, and And then I signed today for a grant that we're looking to bring in to be a regional fire training center for our fire department. We have had that for a long time, but this is actually enhancing that fire training option for us at that site. So, so that's the 88 million worth of projects that we're working on. The FY26, I'm going to leave you with the 5-year plan. This is going to be something that you can take a look at, see what we have. I'm not going to go through all those pages for you, so don't be afraid. I'm not going to take through each line item on that. But that's something for you to take a look at, and you're going to have this on your next meeting to be able to provide any feedback back to David. David will be able to provide it to me so that I can communicate that back to the council. So that's the intent of what we'll do tonight. So I won't go through those line items. What I will draw your attention to is this one page. That's the FY26 bond. This is really what we'll be looking to move forward with. One thing that I want to add to the 5-year plan, we currently, 2 years ago, we started taking on all facilities within the city, which includes the school facilities. So through Public Works, we now, the staff that were assigned to school maintenance is now assigned to the city. The school still pays for that. It's just a transfer of funds for us for those positions. However, what that's allowed us to do is really take a look and start developing future capital costs for our existing facilities. And so we have a facilities manager on staff now. We actually have that person assigned, and their office is at Edward Little High School. And that person is really working on that enormous system that we have at EL. That's the geothermal system that we have there, working through making sure that HVAC system is operating at the level that we had intended for it to operate when we built it is critical. So we hired somebody that's what they specialize in. So they're embedded there at the high school, but they're also working through every one of our facilities and managing our HVAC systems and tying all that in. We will see in the future, when you look at the 5-year plan, you're actually going to, if you want to get into the details, we'll have each building within the city on the 5-year plan with roof improvements, HVAC improvements. This building will be on there in the next 5 years probably. We're over 20 years now in this building. It's hard to believe that we've been here that long, but it's we built this in 2004. And so building's still in great shape. We just recently did the boilers. We've done a lot of renovation, improvements rather, and making sure that we're doing it on a timely manner. This is probably a good example of an infrastructure that we've had in the city where we've actually maintained it well. We don't have a good history of that in other facilities because of funding costs. But I really believe that if we manage it well, we put out a good plan, and we're paying for these things annually, rather than coming forward and saying, we need a whole new facility or we need an extra $10 million to upgrade this, whatever it might be, that's a bigger impact on the taxpayer. Library is included into that. We work through that with the library. We just, in this last capital budget, improved their boiler system, HVAC system. We're mindful of that. And so we'll continue working with them. So we now oversee all the facilities in the city. We manage those, and we will build out a good maintenance plan on each one of those facilities moving forward. We've done the same thing with vehicles. I mentioned, or actually I think Brian Wood, when he was my assistant, I think came last year and presented this. We used to be, every department had vehicles, and they might be assigned to them, but now we have a fleet pool. They're assigned at Public Works. Public Works manages all that. So that's controlling a lot of our costs. We also took out of every department's budget last year all of the utility operating costs. That's all now managed through our facilities department. So that's been a good cost saver for us as well. But when you look down through the FY26 bonds, we have as you all know, we're in the process of our reval for the city. This is a partial payment of a reval for the city and the cost for that. We have some fire department items, really small items, but still capital worthy, and that's the rescue boat and and it's also the Cascade air fill system for all the air packs for the fire department. We have some IT costs that are built in here. We're allocating about $50,000 every year to continue to expand our fiber connection. When certain projects come up, we try to get fiber to those areas, but then that's allowing us to expand that fiber connection. Fiber is saving us funding and we're able to put our entire system on our network through our fiber. So we're really building a good network of fiber throughout the city. And so whenever we have a project, we're expanding that. Because of Kitty Hawk, we need to expand the fiber there, while we're able to now also include the airport and that fiber expansion, because we've taken over the management of the airport in the last couple of years. And so we were able to provide that additional service out there. Security camera projects, believe it or not, I mean, every time we look at enhancements in different areas, it's, well, what are we going to put here to put a camera so that we can capture that? We tie that into the fiber so it's on the network. But those are some of the improvements that we look at. I think I would really just jump down to some of the engineering. The major reconstruction, you're not going to see a big line item like you normally do on major reconstruction. We currently contracted out last year to do a road assessment. We have a scorecard system for all of our roads, when they should be redone, what's that schedule look like. It scores every road we have in the city and provides us a good report. We hadn't done that for, I think, around 10 years. And so this assessment we'll be getting, and it'll be a lot different system than in the past. There's actually one vehicle driving down the road, capturing all that through a camera system, measuring the road, seeing where we have potholes, whatever it is, sidewalks included. So we're capturing all that information. Before, it was done with teams of people going out, and then you had a bit of a variable with who's scoring and who's rating it, right? And so that's not the case this time. So we put a pause on any major reconstruction till we get that report back and then determine where should we be allocating our funds. And so we put about $100,000 in there just for design work. For when we do get that, we'll have some money to begin the design work on that. Major drainage, that's an increase this year because of the culvert failure on Stetson Road. And so that's the added cost for that. If you've seen that, the DOT posted that to a weight limit right now. It's one where we thought we were going to have a few more years on that. And DOT, they just assessed it last year, said, yes, you're probably good for 3 to 4 years. Came back the next year and said, it's already gotten to a level where it's not, it's fine for regular vehicles, but no large vehicles on that road. So that's a bit of an increase for us. We have our DOT match that helps us leverage our funds. We still do our resurfacing. We did assessment for retaining walls, so that's part of this, so we can see what that looks like. Lake Grove Park has been a big improvement for us. If you've been out to Lake Grove, you'll see all the enhancements that took place there. Part of the need is to expand the parking lot for that park, and I think the small little basketball court out there probably hasn't been done since it was first done in the 60s or 70s probably. It needs to just be refurbished. So that's in here. Some of these other funds are matching dollars. So those congressional dollars that I talked about require a match. And so you'll see some of the matching dollars for those that are included in here. The walkability UPI grant match. We also have a small area master plan study. This is the mall area that we're looking to include in this. And it's also a downtown area, which would include Great Falls, and the small plan, master plan study. This will be an add-on to the comp plan work. So as we work through comp plan, these will be add-ons. And so that means it's outside the scope of that work, but we need to make sure we have the funding to be able to really identify those areas, elevate that work, and make sure we have a good plan moving forward. Airport, we have a hangar project out there that received congressional funds. This is the match, and it's only half of the match. We share the other half of that match with the city of Lewiston. And so that's what's allocated here. We always have dangerous building and junkyard cleanups in our budget. Comprehensive plan program, the funds for that's allocated in here at $250,000. We have road maintenance equipment regularly. And then we're allocating about $50,000. This is when we're going to probably allocate $50,000 just to maintain our parks and our open spaces. We have not replaced benches in quite some time. We haven't done some facelifting to some of our parks. This is allocating those funds. Rather than doing a large project where sometimes we don't have the bandwidth to get all of it done in 1 year, we're chunking this out each year. So we'll identify one park, get an upgrade on that park, and then we'll move on to the next one the following year. We've done an assessment on the parks. We have identified which ones should be completed. If you've seen some of our parks, we've just recently upgraded all the playground equipment to a lot of our parks. That's getting a great response. But now it'd be nice to have some benches for people to sit on when they're there. And so that's all part of that. We work with transportation on a shared initiative with the city of Lewiston for bus replacements. We allocate $50,000 a year, which goes into account. So when we are ready to purchase a bus, those funds are available. It's a matching dollars with the federal government when we purchase those. So it's not the full amount, but we're in a good place where we won't be purchasing those for a few years. We have a good fleet right now. We'll continue operating that way. And then I mentioned Engine 2 station reconstruction, and then the school, about $1 million. They have maybe about 2 projects that they're looking at within those funds, and so they'll be talking to their school committee and identifying those and what are the priorities. But it'll be about $1 million that they'll have in there. So right now we're looking at $11,797,000 for bonding funds, and then we also have other funds, and these are our EMS reserve. We have money that's allocated that we set aside so that our EMS program is not costing the taxpayers dollars for equipment. It comes out of the revenue that we receive for our EMS service. And then also, I started last year having operating capital, and this is, we have cruiser replacements, we have some pickup truck replacements. We have things that really aren't capital items. It's something that we should be putting in our operating. They're costs that come up every year, and they're not the traditional large amounts that would carry over a lifespan of 10 years. They don't last that long. And so I started putting this operating capital in, and that's what, about $500,000 is allocated for that. And each year I'm looking to probably increase that so we can reduce what we bond and shift it to capital. Questions? That's the report.
Certainly, thank you, Phil. It sounds like you're really listening to the public. They make a lot of comments. A lot of these things have been commented on and been concerns for the public. One thing that stood out on the 5-year plan one was the traffic calming and pedestrian safety, because with the larger developments that we're building, they all impact that. So thank you for looking forward with that and making sure that the money's available when it's needed, and not we'll hope to put something in the future or something.
Great, thanks.
Mm-hmm.
That's good feedback.
Hi, Phil. Thank you so much. I just wanted to touch base on your fiscal year 26 bond, the engineering major drainage. That's where you touched on the Stetson Road culvert. Ironically, we have a Stetson Road project that we're discussing tonight. Eric, Phil, can you clarify whether or not the failing culvert is between the proposed construction area and Route 4? I mean, when we're potentially prohibiting large vehicles, how would construction even occur?
Yeah, there's North River Road. We still have access that can make sure that we're bringing the right size vehicles there. We had hoped, if Dan Goyette couldn't be here tonight, one thing a lot of our staff members do, they're also involved in the community, and Dan had a community event tonight he had to be at, but Dan's our city director of our engineering department. If Dan was here, he'd tell you that he had planned on that and replacement of that, tying in about the same time that Lewiston was going to be putting their secondary water line up through that road. That was the goal, and but because of the failure, we had to elevate it up. And so we'll still have access to the construction site through North River Road. We did make improvements this year in the existing budget for North River Road. Because we knew that was failing, we had to go ahead and do some of the work on North River Road so that it was passable. So,
Thank you, Phil.
yeah.
No, and I appreciate that, Tim and Paul. It's all full circle, right? So, talking about Broad Street, South Main Street, obviously we had some projects out there. We know that there was some issues with, the infrastructure around the water and sewer. So it just kind of all comes full circle. Again, it's funny. I thought the same thing. Our next item on the agenda is the Stetson Road, which, by the way, we just had the conversation from your, city planning perspective. So.
The only other thing I didn't mention was just, we are very mindful of the TIFs that we have in place, the money that we're capturing through TIFs. So a lot of our most recent TIFs that we've created, we're capturing 15% of those TIF funds to go towards public safety. So those will go directly to the debt service so that we can lessen that amount that's going to the taxpayer because we've sheltered those funds. And then we also know as we continue, we still have a lot of runway, I guess you could say, with our TIF funds. The state has a cap on how much we can actually shelter in that way. We still have a lot of capacity. So we'll continue looking at projects like the ones that are coming before you. We're already teeing those up for the council to look at so that we can shelter those, create an account for that so that future reconstruction, if the timing was right, it would have been all right for this, but future costs for infrastructure costs, we can use those TIF monies for that.
So who ultimately has the domain over the TIF funds? And this is on the second time I've actually heard this, right? So I think there was a TIF around Stable Ridge, right? They had received it. Did that so do we ever kind of get full circle to know if that ends up happening?
Yeah. A lot of those projects, they're building their accounts up now, right? Because it's only a certain amount every year that gets pulled from that and gets allocated. And some of them depends on whether or not there was a credit enhancement agreement with it, and so it really is a bit of a moving target with a lot of those. But they're building those accounts now. I think Merrill Road might be a good example where we had set a TIF up for, I think it was Future Guard.
Merrill Road was Future Guard. Stetson Road as well for the nursing facility.
For the nursing facility. So we have those funds building, but those are really recent projects, and so it takes a while for the account to build up. But there'll be future dollars in there that we can take those funds to help cover the debt service for these projects that we're bonding now that we can offset debt service for in the future. So they go back to the council.
Okay, and the council.
So the council through capital expenditures, that's where it goes back to.
Perfect. All right.
If I could add related to Merrill Road too, Phil mentioned as a project that has a TIF associated. You will see a lot of roadway construction, even though you don't see it in this proposed document that was funded last year, or other CDS, Congressional Delegated Spending projects. The Riverwalk extension, that'll extend our downtown Riverwalk through Bonnie Park out to Washington. The Washington Street study will look at ways to get across Washington Street safely so we can tie in other neighborhoods over time. You will see a Mount Auburn Ave pavement rehab, reconstruction projects on Granite Street, Davis, Hillsdale, Merrill Road, as was mentioned, 1.3 miles of Merrill Road reconstructed, plus a turning lane at Hotel Road that already kind of functions that way, but that'll be formalized. And then Loring Avenue as well. So there are a lot of road improvements scheduled for this summer that people are getting notices for now.
Fantastic. All right, anything else for Phil before we go on to the next agenda item? Phil, do you need anything from us?
Just if you do have suggestions or things you want the council to consider, you have that process. So if you provide that to David at your next meeting, and he'll just have a small section on the agenda for you to be able to share that, and then I can then take that to the council when they consider the CIP.
Perfect, appreciate it.
Thanks for your time, thanks for your service.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Okay, the next item on the agenda is the Stetson Road multifamily. This was something that we'd already heard previously in our last meeting. It was tabled to this meeting, and I will hand it back over to staff. I know that there's been some changes.
Yes.
Didn't mean to spoil the fun. Change it.
Okay, so at your last meeting, or one of your previous meetings, this project was, you saw a project with 180 residential units. The applicant has updated the plan to only have 160 units, and the primary reasoning behind that was they couldn't meet the 30-foot separation and still avoid the impact on wetlands. So going with the environmentally conscious way forward, they chose to reduce the units to meet that setback. This did bring the project overall below the requirement for the traffic movement permit, but applicants still produced a comprehensive traffic impact analysis for that area, based off their site. Another thing that has changed since the last time you've seen the project is the applicant has revised their utility plan and worked with the Auburn Water and Sewer District to basically provide everything that they would need in order to adopt it and become public. And the final thing that you're going to see as a condition tonight as well is that they're still working on pump station schematics, but the water department superintendent, the water department superintendent is fully comfortable with all the conversations that are having and fully expects that they'll come out positive. And so that would be the only condition. So you guys don't have it, the placement on your plans on where the pump station is will stay the same, but the pump station itself might be different than the one that you see in your plans currently. The other thing that has changed is we've worked with engineering on a final schematics for sidewalk connectivity. So there was a lot of conversation about where the sidewalks would go, if there would need to be a crosswalk or not. And we've decided to keep, it's about 900 feet, a little over 900 feet of sidewalk, and we're going to keep it on the westerly side, which is the same side as the project, and it's going to connect back to Center Street. And there is one note I need to make about the thing. In my staff report, I mentioned that there was a crosswalk being put in, but because of this change in sidewalks, there will no longer be a crosswalk. And we are asking for a condition that the sidewalks be fully built before the end of phase 1. Oh, that's another new thing about this. They're proposing the project in 3 phases. One of the primary reasons behind this is that our applications have a 1-year approval date. So by putting in the phasing, they're able to complete each step and get a little longer than the 1 year.
Didn't we change it to 2 years?
I think we had a discussion about it in the workshop, but I don't think we actually took any official action on it.
It was a workshop, yep.
And I kind of remember it being more specifically related to solar projects because of the problem with connecting with CMP, but
Yeah, so solar projects do have a 2-year, but every other project has 1. And that's everything I have for you.
You guys have any questions for staff before I ask the applicant to come forward? Is the applicant here? Okay, excellent.
I actually do have one quick
Sure.
question.
Sorry, Maureen.
It's applicable to the Stetson Road project and also to the one that we're going to be reviewing next. And it's a question for staff just on the definitions. I see that we're reviewing these as either multifamily dwellings or 2-family dwellings, and I'm struggling just to differentiate that from a 1-family attached dwelling. And I was wondering what the differentiation is there.
I'm going to attempt to answer this question. Still learning the code myself here. But there is a specific definition for, I think to your point, one family attached. So that's a residential structure designed to be a single-family unit, private outside entrance, not necessarily occupying a private lot, common walls, each one family attached unit must be 190 square feet. As I'm reading that, I'm not thinking that's going to answer your question. Because you want to know the difference between that, like in a two-family.
Yes. And I only ask because my read of the ordinance is that we would be reviewing them under different standards if they're a two-family or a multifamily versus a one-family attached. And just reading the definitions, I'm unclear on what makes something either a duplex or a one-family attached.
Relatively subtle differences. The one family attached references that there's a private outside entrance. That's not referenced in a two-family dwelling. Two-family dwelling literally is just residential purposes for two families, separate facilities. I'm not seeing much difference here. There is more specifics under one family attached for common walls and adjoining units. I hate to say this, I'm going to defer to if we have any history here with the difference.
Yeah, I guess it doesn't specify ownership either, but historically, the attached singles have quite often been condo projects that are separate ownership, totally separate utilities. Sounds like you could go either way with that definition. These buildings do have an exterior entrance, but they are still either 2 or 4 units in a single structure. And they're in common ownership though, so they're more in line with what we usually see for multifamily rather than a condo that could be an attached single family.
So the intent is not to sell these as individual units? They're going to be sold as individual buildings?
I think that it's accurate that there's no intent to sell them individually, and I think that, yeah.
For this project, right? We're talking about the
Correct.
Stetson Road. I would go project by project. So I'd say this project, I would ask that question just specific to this one.
So I guess that might be a question for the applicant, but I see you have two unit buildings and 3 unit buildings. Is the intent to sell that as an individual building that will then be rented out to 2 or 3 families?
All the buildings would be owned by AR Development, and each unit would be rented separately. So the entire site would be under common ownership.
Is that helpful?
It is for this one.
Okay.
So Brandon Carr with DePreet Engineering. I really don't have much to add to what Natalie said. I mean, the main was the drop-in units, the roadway, utilities for the most part, the circulation, the drainage all remain the same for what you saw before. Limit of work, same as what you saw before. We are, just to expand on the sewer pump, it's strictly the type of pumps. So we had proposed what's called a quad station, which has 4 pumps that alternate. The city's more familiar with a duplex setup, so we said we'll match whatever pumps and manufacturers you're used to dealing with. So that's the last piece on that, but other than that, we're comfortable with the easements and the locations of all the utilities and how the services to the buildings and billing and all that stuff would be set up. And then the last biggest change is the sidewalk out to, so it's from that western entrance west towards Center Street up to where the sidewalk coming in ends. So it would make that connection from our site all the way up there.
And I think just a bit of a background, right? Like we struggled with a little bit the 180 units when it came to like 30 feet, you know. So we appreciate you taking that back and looking at it. I think there was some question about whether the difference of the 160 versus the 180 and really what you were gaining for possibly what the site was losing. So we appreciate you guys taking that back and looking at it.
Yeah, so that obviously reduces the need for that removes the need for that waiver. So
Correct.
We got clear direction from the board, went back, and we feel it's still a very good project.
I'm glad to hear that both sides were able to meet the goals that you had with maintaining the open space and spreading the buildings out a little bit.
Okay, any other questions for staff or the applicant before I open it up to public comment? Okay, seeing none, I would seek a motion to open it up for public comment.
So moved.
Do you have a second?
Second.
All those in favor? Okay, if you are a member of the public and you would like to come up to address the Stetson Road project, come to the podium, state your name, your address, and you have 5 minutes.
Spencer Dunn, Court Street. I'm here to strongly encourage the Planning Board to remain consistent in its approval of housing projects in Auburn. I urge the board to approve the project in front of them, though I feel the revisions this developer has very kindly chosen to make were not super necessary given previous project approvals and precedents set by the city. The development in question is building townhome complexes and duplex units that would begin to fill a major hole in our local housing stock. There is very little of this type of housing available in the area, despite it being one of the most highly sought after and desired. This developer has come to Auburn and actively chosen to build this type of housing over arguably cheaper to build, higher density, more profitable options. It should be noted that this developer has gone above and beyond in being highly restrained in what they sought to build here. This parcel falls within a general business commercial type zone, which would allow for projects of greater scale and density than what is presently proposed and in front of the board. This moderated behavior is vastly different from much of what we've seen from other developers that have come to build projects in our city recently, who have thought less about what Auburn needs and more about what they stand to gain from maximizing their property at the city's expense. This developer has delayed their timeline to revisit their layout and put forth another even more in-depth and comprehensive traffic study, all for a well-serviced side road off of an otherwise well-trafficked, high-throughput intersection that already had a signal and was already more than capable of addressing the additional car trips this project would generate. They have also removed 20 much-needed housing units from their original plan in response to the Planning Board's prior commentary. This developer has completely shifted their mixed-unit layout to instead put almost all of the smaller footprint duplexes on their own road rather than having them interspersed with the larger-scale townhomes. This change in spacing and layout has fundamentally changed the dynamic of this development and come at the cost of a number of units that did not need to be removed erstwhile of environmental concerns and or spacing between differently sized buildings. Very few, if any, other developers of even higher density and larger scale and far more disruptive projects in our city in recent years were subject to or willing to engage in this level of revision due to woes over traffic, scale, or environmental concerns. Nor were they as willing, if at all willing, to revise down their original plans, which were far higher density than this project and had less infrastructure in place to accommodate them. Nor were they as interested in addressing any board or community concerns, so much so that legal action was taken to force this board to change its decisions because, strictly speaking, if a proposal fit the zone, it had to be approved regardless of the board's concerns. Technically, the original proposal for this project was allowable within the highly permissive zone type it's located in, and yet the plans have changed thanks to the developer's considerate nature and willingness to be partners with, rather than takers from, the City of Auburn. Given how accommodating this developer has been, both in its original and revised plans, and how needed this missing and highly desired housing type is, I strongly urge the Planning Board to approve the plan before them in any of its forms, rather than get bogged down in the legalese pertaining to zoning ordinances. Thank you.
Okay, anyone else from the public would like to come forward?
Stephen Beal, 575 Johnson Road. As several of you know, I attend lots of public meetings, and a couple of things I've learned in two recent meetings are relevant, several recent meetings are relevant to this particular project. First, the head of the engineering department, Mr. Goyette, did brief the city council last week, as the city manager has just reported to you on this Stetson Road culvert project. That involves MDOT because of the traffic load and the flowing water underneath. And MDOT requires that such a project be completed between July and October of any particular year. This proposes to do that. I haven't heard any detail yet regarding how long the road will be closed, but the project contemplates inserting a new concrete box-type culvert rather than the rounded or elliptical metal culvert. So that's just additional factual information that everybody should be aware of. The other point that I want to make is with respect to the sewage pumping station. That's referred to in the departmental review paragraph on page 6 of the staff report by Natalie, which states that upon finalizing the pump station design agreement, the systems will be dedicated as public infrastructure. And that's followed over on page 8 by the provision in paragraph C of the conditions of approval that prior to adoption of the sewer lines, the applicant must do several necessary things to secure prior approval of the plans and documentation to the satisfaction of it should be just simply the Auburn Sewer District, because the Water District and the Sewer District are like fraternal twins. They're not the same entity, but very closely aligned. And the point to be made is that the Water District recently had a very similar problem with respect to a pumping station with respect to another developer and another project, wherein the developer first didn't provide the actual equipment for the pumping station, and then once the equipment was finally installed, didn't provide the necessary operational directions to operate the pumping station. And in the meantime, the Water District had accepted responsibility for it, but didn't have the operating instructions, which are now done by computer programming. So for several months, which necessitated stern letters from the superintendent and then a legal letter from the district's attorney, were consumed before the computerized operating program was provided to the Water District. Here I would suggest that after the words plans and documentation in subparagraph C of the conditions for approval on page 8, that the planning board require adding the additional language and receipt of operational software in order to ensure that this is all provided to the district before the sewer district does accept responsibility for the pumping station. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else like to come forward?
My name is John Rice. I'm the Director of Operations at Schooner Estates Senior Living Community at 200 Stetson Road, which is adjacent to the project. I'd like to make a footnote to the pumping stations. First, I've heard of that going on over there, and just a caveat, we sit on top of granite, and I've had major lightning strikes that have taken out telephone systems and fire alarm systems, so just plan to ground it or to have a backup to that so you can swap systems. It's messed my electronics and HVAC systems, not just in the main campus, but also Schooner Memory Care next door. So just forewarning. Thank you for hearing my concern. Schooner's been at 200 Stetson Road for 36 years, and this is quite a dramatic change to the landscape for the 150 plus people that live at Schooner and many others that live in the area and travel on that road. At this juncture, I think what would be mutually beneficial for both Schooner Estates and for the project as a whole is looking at the planting schedule for the property. And what I've seen, and I don't know if it's been amended since I've seen it, but the type of trees that are being proposed along Stetson Road are typically something you would see in a in a residential neighborhood where the houses face the street and you've got the yard and everything. And in this particular layout, it appears that, you know, this is the back side of the structures are facing the public view to a large degree. And I would just simply like to request or propose that you would consider requiring a evergreen type of screening or a cedar type of screening that would be more comprehensive, certainly between the driveway, between the driveways, and perhaps even north or up past the hospice house a little bit. This would actually be twofold. Certainly provides more aesthetics from the street and from the people passing by, but also there's a lot of vehicle traffic that comes in and out of Schooner at all hours of the night. We're there 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So there's a lot of vehicle traffic, and there's a lot of headlights that come in and out of that parking lot as we come and go on Stetson Road. So as you can see, the doctor's office. Slow down.
No, it's lagging, sorry.
Our driveway's approximately here. We've got 3 driveways. We have 3 driveways that exit facing that property. So it's kind of feels a bit of a win-win to help both the inhabitants of the project and then also Schooner Estates to provide that screening. So thank you very much for those comments.
Anyone else like to come forward? Okay, seeing none, I would seek a motion to close public comment.
So moved.
Have a second?
Seconded.
All those in favor? Excellent. Okay, so heard a couple things from the public. Any other questions for staff? I will open it up for the board to.
The screening is certainly a valid point. I'm not an arborist, so I don't know what best would grow there as well, in addition to providing year-round screening, which is what I think the gentleman was looking for.
Sorry, yeah, I think we're all set. Public comments closed. Go ahead.
So perhaps the city arborist could be consulted, or I'm sure the developer has people that know what to grow there. But the concern is valid, but at the same time, it has to be something that's going to survive on a roadside with salt being sprayed on it. And
If the board's comfortable, I mean, that's, I would say that's a reasonable condition of approval, just to work with their landscape architect to come up with plantings that provide screening out there more so than, you know, the deciduous trees that they have out there. But right now, it's planted more as like a streetscape out there, you know, a traditional trees.
Right.
So, to the gentleman's point, I mean, it probably it would benefit both parties probably to have something done out there, so.
yep.
Any other thoughts from the board around that? Or the other one as well?
Could the city chime in, could staff chime in on whether or not the verbiage should be Auburn Water District or Auburn Water and Sewer District?
The condition is specific to the sewer line out there. So I guess it would be just the sewer district, because they've already indicated that they're gonna have the water line accepted by, or designed to be accepted as a public utility out there. It's the sewer line that was a new development that Natalie and I had talked to the superintendent about. It was actually his suggestion, even though it's more of a burden for the district. At the end of the day, it's probably a better outcome for everybody if that's actually maintained by the public out there. So yes, sewer district specific to that condition.
Thank you.
Okay, at this juncture, I mean, any more questions for staff? If not, I would seek a motion.
I make a motion that the proposal meets the requirements of section 60-1277 for a site plan review and section 60-1359 for a subdivision proposing to 50 residential buildings consisting of 20 duplexes and 30 quadplexes, sidewalks, and paved drive aisle off Stetson Road. Also, city assessors parcel ID 291-011. The proposed project should be considered pursuant to Chapter 60, Article 16, Division 2, Site Plan Review, Article 4, Subdivision, Article 4, Subdivision 13, General Business District, and Article 4, Division 7, Multifamily Suburban District, with the following conditions. No development activity until any bonding or inspection fees are determined by the engineering department. Blasting permit in advance of blasting from the City of Auburn, Planning, Permitting, and Code Department. Prior to the adoption of sewer lines by the Auburn Sewer District, the applicant must complete all necessary infrastructure improvements, secure approval of pump station design, conduct required testing and inspections, and provide as-built plans and documentation to the satisfaction of the Auburn Sewer District, and be in receipt of appropriate operational software. Prior to the issuance of a certificate of occupancy for the last unit constructed in Phase 1, the sidewalk along Stetson Road must be completed to the city's satisfaction, and E, adequate screening along Stetson Road between project and Schooner Estates be established.
All right, do you have a second?
Second.
Okay, do you have any discussion of the motion?
I guess the only question I have, because we've deleted water from item C towards the end of that statement, earlier, we still have Auburn Water and Sewer District.
Yeah, so I think you heard him say Auburn and Sewer District, is that what you heard?
I did.
Yeah, so I think like it was just, he meant Auburn Water and Sewer, right?
I'm certain I said Auburn Sewer District both times, but if I did not, that is my intention.
Just Sewer District.
Any other discussion of the motion? Okay, seeing none. All those in favor? All right, motion carries, none opposed. Okay. Next item on the agenda is the Danville Corner Housing Project. I will hand this back over to staff.
So, the Danville Corner Road project has also been in front of you a couple different times. We went to our city attorney and got a confirmation on the density on that site, in particular the interpretation of what constituted as multifamily versus single family. And the attorney came back with a very strict determination of how that ordinance is written, which has all been outlined in your packets. So the applicant came back, instead of the 44 single-family homes that they were originally proposing, they've come forward with 42 units of duplexes, so 21 duplexes. This is, so today, they are looking from comments from you, comments from the public, but we're not going to be, the intention is not to be making any final approvals, but to postpone this again to their next meeting, where they'll be able to bring us their final layout, their updated utility plans, all those other things that go along with this. So in your packets, you have the layout that they're proposing and pictures of whatnot of the buildings they're proposing as well.
I'll offer as well. Gave that some more thought, Maureen, about what the two-family and a single-family attached is. And when I look at it more closely, dwelling, one family attached, the idea is that's kind of townhouse. The way it's defined there is it's one unit next to another. So the one unit has an upstairs and a downstairs. There's a common wall. There's another unit next to it. A two-family can have it either way, but more specifically, you could have one dwelling unit upstairs, one dwelling unit downstairs type situation. Attached is not that. That makes more sense.
It does. So in this case, I guess maybe this is a question for the applicant. I'm not sure if planning staff is aware, but is each unit intended to be sold individually here, or will the buildings also be under common ownership?
Guess I would direct that to the applicant.
Craig Sweet from Teradyne Consultants. I believe he's going to plan on selling the buildings as one unit, as one package, but I'll have more confirmation on that when we come back with the whole packet.
And are you saying if he sells them, does that run afoul of the ordinance? Is that what I'm hearing you say?
Well, it just seems like if the differentiator that we're using is that a duplex or a two-family is a building under common ownership versus a one-family attached where each individual unit is individually owned, then that would be a different review standard. I think if they're considered one-family attached, it would be a planned unit development for the review standards.
Yeah, I'm trying to follow your, only because, so we had the one family that was unattached, right? That's what we had. And there was some pushback, right? And then there was a legal opinion that it did not fall within that zone, right? So now I'm hearing that's off the table, right?
Yeah, so this doesn't really go to density. It's just the review standards and whether or not this is considered a two-family or if it's a one-family attached. So nothing to do with the number of units, but just the review standards based on how it's classified.
Okay, I was thinking too more around whether it was sellable or not sellable, right? I'm feeling that's your is that your question, whether it's going to be.
So my question is, it kind of goes to how we're defining it, and if it's a building under common ownership that's leased out to two different occupants, then it would be a two-family versus a building with two single-family individually owned units.
Okay, and I think we're doing the first, right?
I'd have to confirm with the applicant, but I believe he will be selling the buildings, not the units.
Okay.
But I'd have to confirm.
Would that mean we would have 21 different owners of buildings, or one owner for the entire complex, or 42 different deeds?
It would be, it would potentially be, I'd have to confirm 21 different building owners, or if he does the units, then it would be 42 units. But he is keeping the land, and similar to the intention of the last one, he's going to be selling the buildings or the units. I'd have to confirm his final decision on that one with the final application. But he's intending to keep the roadway and utilities and infrastructure and everything. Buildings will be sold, or units, whatever, either way, but outside of the walls of the structures will be owned by the applicant and maintained. So the walls inside and outside will be sold at some capacity, units or building, but he'll maintain the rest and keep ownership. And then just, yeah, so once we started shifting into duplex, there were some minor shifts in the roads. We just wanted to take the extra time to make sure we got the final grading updated in utilities. But overall, it's 2 less units on the site. We've worked through everything previously with the water and sewer district, so we're just updating the layout on that. But we worked through all the sizing capacity at the larger. Stormwater still the same to the large gravel wetland. It's reducing it from what we had previously proposed. And then we've kept the internal trail system there and the sidewalks as well. So each unit will have a garage and then parking for one car in front of it. And all driveways are about 23 feet wide to allow for adequate car spacing, even if with a larger vehicle. And then from the sidewalks on the inside loop, they're 23 from the edge of the sidewalk. So those are a little bit longer driveways. Overall, same general premise of the project. I'll have confirmation on the building versus unit that we discussed about, but we just wanted to provide this to the board to kind of get the feedback.
Okay, any other questions? Oh, sure.
I think I raised this question in review previously, but is this under a condominium type agreement?
It's a little bit different than a condo because the owner is the applicant, or the owner is going to maintain the land, so there will be some sort of agreement, but it's not like a traditional condo development type thing because the buildings will be sold at some capacity.
Who maintains the exterior of the building?
The purchaser of the building. So they're purchasing. If they purchase the unit, they would maintain the interior and exterior of the unit. They purchase the building. Whoever buys the building would maintain the interior and exterior.
Driveways?
Driveways would be by the applicant. So the structures are sold. The rest is by the applicant in maintenance. So the landscaping would be maintained by the landowner.
Okay, so any outside maintenance of the
Yeah.
structure, the owner is going to be trespassing upon the owner's property.
It's only the structure themselves will be sold. None of the land, and the land directly under the structure, but as soon as you go outside the walls of that structure, the applicant will own the rest of the land and the roadway infrastructure. So it wouldn't be trespassing to do it, because the homeowner would be doing the maintenance on their home, on interior and exterior.
But in order to do some work on the exterior with a ladder or so forth or equipment, they would be trespassing upon the property owner's land.
Well, there will be some. It's not a condo, but there will be some form of agreement because they need agreement to drive there, park there, so it wouldn't be trespassing. When they buy it, they'd have the agreement at the site.
Okay, and I guess a question, thinking back, and this goes back quite a few years, it seems to me we did have a review of whatever the agreement, whether it was a condo agreement or association agreement, that was also part of maybe the review process. I guess I'll ask that question more towards staff at this point.
I know we have seen those with some condo projects. I think that's something we could ask the applicant to provide as part of the final review package.
Yeah, I'd like to see some sort of agreement or some sort of outline of what is going to be allowed by a structure owner. I guess the other question or comment I had, the project came to us as being a way of providing a affordable home maybe for a first home buyer. And I guess it does go to the question of really, do they have to buy the whole structure? Because then the initial cost is going to be much more than an individual house, certainly. I mean, it is, most people trying to get into the market, duplexes are a good way to do it because they can essentially buy the structure, have a living space for themselves, but also have a rental unit to actually carry the mortgage. So I think it does. I think it would be good to know, because we are kind of getting away from affordability if somebody's looking just for a small house to get into. They're certainly going to have to consider whether they can carry the mortgage and make sure they can also be a landlord to put somebody in the other unit.
So I understand your concerns, but I don't think that is something that's part of our decision whether it's affordable or not. You know what I mean? It's whether we like it or not is another story, but,
No, I perfectly
Yeah.
agree. However, that was a statement and a reason for bringing the project to us previously. So I think it's just,
Right.
just a thought that needs to be at least put on the table.
so I guess well, it's probably for after you're off the thing. We can finish up with you and maybe continue this afterward.
Yeah, good idea. Perfect. Okay, I think any other questions for the applicant? Okay. Seeing none, we do have a public hearing, so I would seek a motion to open up public comment.
So moved.
Do you have a second?
Second.
All those in favor? Okay, if you are in the public and you would like to come forward, please state your name, your address, and you have 5 minutes.
Hi, thanks for letting me talk. My name's Dana Staples. I live at 32 Greenfield Drive. I just wanted to talk a little bit about the interpretation of Section 60-3072. I think this is a failure of zoning to say that we can have 122 units an acre in a multifamily, but only 28 in a single family. It doesn't really make a lot of sense to me. And I like the point that Mr. Hayes was making about affordability. I think that's a prime concern that we should be really looking at here. When I first saw the applicant or the project on the planning board agenda a few months ago, I thought that it was really neat to have that opportunity to purchase a single family home at maybe a lower cost. And I think that was something that we're missing probably now. Hoping that maybe some of those zoning issues can be addressed at some point. But I think that it's a good project. It could be a better project if we weren't so strict with the zoning interpretation. Thanks.
Good evening. Excuse me. Good evening. My name's John Cleveland. I live at 183 Davis Avenue in Auburn. I want to just take a moment as I review this and the ordinances, because there's a bit of a gray area here, and Maureen Hopkins spoke somewhat to that, and I'd like to amplify on it. These are proposed as duplexes. That's what the application calls them. There is no such definition in the ordinance about a duplex. So it doesn't define it, and it makes it a little gray because it defines two-family and it defines single-family attached. Single-family attached, if that's what this is, and if the developer owner intends to sell the units individually so that each unit is owned by a different owner, that might suggest that they're a single-family attached kind of structure going forward. And single-family attached under Section 6306, number 4, delineates that in addition to your subdivision review, simultaneously, there would be a review under the plan unit development, which actually can be a benefit to the developer as well. It's not just a negative impact, because you can actually get a bonus for doing a plan unit development as well. But what I think is important is, because this is somewhat unique here in that it's not a condominium association, but the developer's going to own all of the land and the structures will be sold. If this arises, this can be the precedent on how you define similar kind of structures, on whether you're going with a duplex or whether you're going with single-family attached. I think it's important for you, I don't have the answer, but I think it's important to set what the definition is going to be, so that as other members of planning boards and other staff come, there's a clear understanding on how we got to that definition in that review process. So I would urge you to take a careful look at that as well. I also do think it is important to understand, because this is different than you've normally seen, on what is the relationship in regards to the land and the owner of the building. In a condominium, you have a clear understanding that it's an association, they have rules. In this case, there's no intention to sell any of the land. So is the land underneath the building owned in any way by the owners? Is it leased to them in any way by the owners? What is the relationship with the common space like the driveway? I think it'd be good to understand that as you go through your site plan review, so that you can be consistent in your application going forward. I would just make a note, this is not a derogatory statement at all, but in the public postings, which is what I get to use, and any other member of the public, the only thing that was in there was the one-page discussion in regards to how you determine the density requirement. Didn't see any of these things. It just would have been helpful if this is going to be presented here and discussed, if it could have been in the public file, so anyone who had an interest would have had the opportunity to see it as well. Thank you for your opportunity to make comments.
Okay, anyone else of the public like to come forward? Okay, seeing none, I seek a motion to close public comment.
So moved.
Okay, do you have a second?
Second.
All those in favor? Okay, public comment is closed. Okay, why don't we start kind of back to front. I know that there was, David had come to me earlier that there was the public posting about the Danville Quarter. I think that was something that was recognized. So you should want to speak to that just real quickly.
No, someone did bring that to our attention, and that was certainly an oversight by our part, so we apologize
A member
for
of the
that.
public.
Right.
Yep.
We did update it later this afternoon. We would have updated it earlier, but power was out here at City Hall, and the generator didn't kick in, so we were delayed a little bit in doing that. But if the public does go to the website now, they will see what Natalie's put on the screen here today with additional information. So if people do have additional comments, certainly they can reach out to me or Natalie and share those to let us know what their concerns are.
Perfect. It takes a village. The other comment that was made too is that we need to understand this, right? This needs to be understood. I will say, I've been doing this for a while. We have not seen leased land come before us. Leased land is not something new. There are other towns and cities that have leased land out there with owned houses on it. So maybe for us, this is new. And if you feel like as a board, you would like more information, fantastic. But it should not be assumed that the board needs to understand it, that we don't understand it. I just want to make that clear. So yes, if people want more information around leased land, absolutely, you can ask that question.
Yeah, I think the clarification was more the fact that the ordinance doesn't have a definition of duplex, and we're being.
I've got that one up there too. There was
Yeah,
3 topics, and that was number 1.
Yeah.
Mhm.
If the applicant's applying to the staff with an application citing duplexes, either it would be something where we should have duplex defined in our ordinances, or staff, and I think this is probably clear by the question by Ms. Hopkins earlier, that the staff, by the time this comes back before us, will know what review standards it would need to be under by the definition of that the owner would seek to clarify as to whether it's single-family attached or multifamily. And then that way, if we don't have to review a duplex unless it's defined in our ordinance, then that would make things a lot easier for us. And also, I think it wouldn't be a bad idea to, if we have any
People wanna
available
brush up on it
time,
for
to
sure.
get
Yeah,
duplex defined in our ordinances. But
Yep.
until then, to make sure the review standards are clear, that the applicant and staff knows which standards we're reviewing them under next month.
Now, it was my understanding that this already went through our legal team, right? Because we had already kind of questioned what was allowable in the ordinance, and right, this already went through the legal team, right?
Just the interpretation of the standards of section 60-3072, in particular, the definitions of multifamily.
Okay.
And single family. We didn't actually look at the opportunity, anything about 2-family or duplexes or 1-family attached, because that wasn't what the applicant was proposing at the original submission.
Okay. So if that's something that you guys would like to have then brought forth back to the attorney, we can do that. I guess I would just, I mean, in the sake of just being efficient, I mean, if there's any other questions we have around this, I would just ask that we do that this time and not the next time this comes in front of us.
Right. We need a clear litmus test to compare this proposal to. We need to be able to dot i's and cross t's, and there's just so much gray in what it is and what it's defined on and what standards we use to define it, at least from my perspective.
I think it sounds like the applicant's going to be able to have a clear definition when they come back to us, so that it should be easy enough for it to determine what standards we're reviewing it under. But
okay, I know that we're addressing public comment. Did anyone else have anything? I mean, there's no motions to be made on this one. It's really just, we had public comment. We have, more from the.
We need to move to postpone.
You need to.
Oh, yes, you're
Yeah.
right. Thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Not table.
And I would just note, if the board is inclined to postpone it, anybody that is here for this item, they won't get another notice because this was the noticed meeting per se. So.
Can you repeat that, please?
Sure. So the meeting was scheduled for tonight. Public notice was made for that. This is the meeting that was noticed. So if the board is postponing it tonight, in essence, folks are anybody that had an interest was here or was watching it at home, anybody who has an interest will note from your action that this was postponed to a date certain, which is
April 8th, 2025.
Mm-hmm.
I guess for myself, because this is new, there have been some questions raised, and we don't know exactly, we're saying it's not a condo association, but if the purchase of a structure, I guess we're assuming that comes with it a lease of the land underneath. So I guess, no, we don't maybe need it for actual review, but I guess to me, I'd like to understand the transaction and be clear on it, because I think anybody buying a property, so far we've talked just about the structure, so we haven't really talked about the land. Are they leasing or buying the land underneath?
I totally agree with you, Bob. I've lived in a condo for 15 years, and this smells like and it tastes like a condo. That's my opinion without my planning board hat on. With my planning board hat on, I need to know what standards I'm comparing the proposal to.
So I wonder should we do a workshop on lease land versus condo?
we could do that. It sounds like we should probably, get some legal guidance on this too, just to make sure that we're all going in the same direction here, not just for the board's benefit, but for the applicant's benefit as well.
I was thinking too, when we get to miscellaneous, because this isn't the right time to talk about it, but talk about potential changes to the multifamily definitions to incorporate new ideas like the developer had, to see if we can get something like that to be a fit within the ordinances that we have now.
We can do that miscellaneous, because I could not agree more. I was so excited when the project first came through.
Yeah.
And I guess I wouldn't want to hold this project up to do a workshop in between, but I think that I think the applicant recognizes that there's going to be a better understanding what sort of agreement is going to come with respect to the structure owner and the landowner, whether it be whatever the instrument is. But I think we do need to see that to be clear as to, what we're voting on.
Could the workshop be in the same meeting just before?
I was just thinking if we could probably get something put together for the beginning of next meeting before you're doing any substantive review of this project, so you'll have a better foundation on which the project is being
And then we'll also have the legal review too of this in terms of, okay, perfect, yep. I just don't want to conflate the two issues, the conflating the issue of learning versus what this project is. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, we all learn every day as things come towards us, but I don't want to slow a project down because in our purview, we don't see leased land very often.
I love this project on a personal level.
I did.
I love
I
the
loved it too.
architecture. I love
Yep.
I love the layout.
Yep.
I love the project, but I need to put my planning board hat on to be able to check mark boxes.
I mean, I think our goal can be, how do we get this approved with the right criteria being applied, and at the same time figuring out what language might need to be changed to better accommodate these projects going forward here.
Right, so
I move to postpone the substantial review of the Danville Corner Housing Development Proposal to a date certain of April 8th, 2025.
Seconded.
all those in favor? Okay, motion carries. Okay, next item on the agenda, the next few are actually solar items, or actually the next two. Okay, so I will hand this over to staff.
Yes, so the first project is the BWC Gulf Island LLC Auburn Solar Project. You'll see that the applicant for both these next solar projects are the same. But this one is proposing 1.41 megawatt solar array on 10.12 acres. It is in our agricultural and resource protection zone. The biggest notes I have about this one are, one, this is a previously approved project that is being actually decreased in size. So this is something something that was previously approved at the planning board and was never built, and now they're coming back for another solar project in a similar spot, but a smaller size. And the conditions on this that we're looking at are the fire department would like to do, would like the as-built site plans for emergency response access and like all that as a final approval before any final electrical approvals are given. And the other piece for condition approval will need to be the financial surety of the decommissioning plan. So this is something required by our ordinance, but it's also something required by the Maine DEP. And projects in the past, oftentimes the City of Auburn will be signed on under the DEP's bond or whatever process they go through. So that's why we're asking for a condition, so that the applicant can figure out their best way forward. And that would be before any building permits are issued. Sorry. I'm half here.
It's okay, it's late. Any questions for staff before we bring it to the applicant? Is the applicant here for any questions? Okay, perfect.
Hi, Colin Sexton with Blue Wave Energy. As Natalie said, this has come to the planning board before. We had an original approval back in December 2022, almost the exact same project. The changes here are very minor. The access road has been shortened a little bit from what it used to be. I think our LOD has gone up a little bit to include some additional stormwater management areas, including a temporary construction area, but what you're seeing is by and large the same thing that was in front of the board in 2022. There's also been some additions in terms of the O&M plan, waste management plan, discussion of hazardous materials, a few things that were requested by the planning staff in advance of this meeting. Blue Wave has been in business since 2010. We try to be a sustainable solar developer. We developed the project up in Rockport that incorporates blueberry agrivoltaics underneath the panels. We've been a pioneer of dual-use solar facilities in Massachusetts and New England. And what we're looking to do is try to bring that same identity into this project, looking into grazing, apiaries, pollinators at the very minimum. Anything that we can do to co-locate agricultural use, especially in a project like this where we are on farmland, we are trying to be very sustainable, very smart about how we pursue these developments. We want to keep this land in farming. We want to keep this land in the soil recharge for the next 40 years after this project is decommissioned. And you know, we're hoping to be a quiet neighbor and very non-intrusive to everyone in the community. So happy to answer any questions anyone has.
Okay, any questions for the applicant? Okay, seeing none, I would take a motion to open up public comment.
So moved.
Do you have a second?
Second.
All those in favor? Okay, if you are a member of the public and you would like to come forward regarding this project, come to the podium, state your name, address. You have 5 minutes.
Stephen Beals, still at 575 Johnson Road. I just have a quick question for the applicant. As I recall, the previous project, this solar component was a very small part of a much, much larger parcel, was it not, of some approximately 200 acres? That is still the case? And this was located on a part of the parcel that was, as I recall the previous project, less desirable as farmland?
I was going to say, you only have, excuse me real quick, how about, Stephen, can you ask him the questions and then we'll bring, you only have 5 minutes, so I want to. You're done? Oh, okay. Okay, hold on, we still have public comments, so we'll, and then we have that down, and then you can come up after that, so. All right, any other members of the public like to come forward? Okay, seeing none, I seek a motion to close public comment.
So moved.
Okay, all those in favor?
Second.
Okay, second, okay, close public comment. Sorry. I wanted to make sure we got everything done, right? Okay, so there was a question for the applicant. Applicant, would you like to come forward? And we don't need any emails to the staff about our policies and procedures.
So yeah, to answer that question, yes, this is taking 10 acres of I believe it's now about 120 acres of this parcel. This parcel was previously spanning all the way past to the transmission lines to the west, all the way to the east, including a couple residential lots. Over the last 6 or 7 years, what's happened has been some divisions of this property, keeping the existing house lot, a sale out to another family on the east side, and then we have been kind of focused on this field for the entire time that we've been pursuing this development, which has spanned all the way back to 2019. Because of challenges with CMP and the interconnection capacity and all that, we had to drop down to 1 megawatt AC. And then we're looking at trying to locate this project in the best place that we can on this parcel, trying to be cognizant of prime farmland soils, trying to be cognizant of its impact on abutters. What we think we have here is a good location for this project because we're about 700 feet from the closest property line. The equipment pad is an additional 300 feet away from that closest property line. Everyone to the east is either the landowner or screened by natural vegetation. And we're about 1,000 feet from the drive of East Waterman Road. So a lot of factors have gone into this. Typically we're trying to shorten interconnection distance. We kind of got stuck in here as this is where we are developing and surveying and working on this development. And we're confident this is the best place for this development to go on this parcel.
Okay, any questions?
Just one question. It looks like you're maintaining the existing tree line. Is that correct?
Yes. Yeah, we are not proposing any tree clearing.
Okay, any questions for staff? Any deliberation of the board?
Are you ready for a motion?
Okay, perfect.
I make a motion that the proposal meets the requirements of sections 60-1277 and 60-1336 and approve the site plan by BWC Gulf Island Pond LLC, a subsidiary of Blue Wave Energy, to construct a 1.41 megawatt DC ground-mounted solar energy generating system on approximately 10.12 acres at 224 East Waterman Road, tax map lot 137-026, located in the Agricultural and Resource Protection Zoning District. The proposed project has met the standards pursuant to Chapter 60, Article 16, Division 2, Site Plan Review, and Division 3, Special Exception, with the following conditions. No development activity until any bonding or inspection fees are determined by the Auburn Engineering Department. B, prior to any blasting activities, the applicant shall receive blasting permit from the City of Auburn Planning and Permit and Code Department. Prior to the final electrical approval, the applicant shall submit a final as-built site plan to the fire prevention officer indicating all shutdown mechanisms for emergency response. And D, prior to the issuance of a building permit, the applicant shall submit an acceptable financial surety.
All right, do you have a second?
Seconded.
Any discussion of the motion? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor? Okay, motion carries. Next item on the agenda is another solar project, again by, I believe, the same.
Yes.
Same developer.
I'll hand it to staff.
So this is another solar project also in the Agricultural and Resource Protection District. For this one, we're looking at 1.39 megawatt solar arrays, a solar project on 10.91 acres. It's off Penley Corner Road. It's very similar to the project you just approved, and they have the same conditions for approval, so the financial surety for decommissioning and the coordination with the fire department for emergency access.
Okay, I see the applicant is already forward.
Yeah, as Natalie said, this is very similar. We have a long access road to a backfield. There's an existing solar facility that is abutting this project. If you look to the northeast, if you had the satellite image, you can see that project there. Similar offset, we're about 1,100 feet away from, actually it might even be more, I think it's about 1,300 feet away from Penley Corner Road, trying to maintain as much of the existing tree line as possible. We do have a culvert crossing to get to this back lot, but we do think, based on the topography of the site, it's a bit of a rolling hill. This is the best location for the access road and the best location for the facility. We're not impacting any wetlands. We're trying to get about 25 feet off of any wetlands to make sure that we can handle stormwater treatment appropriately. We had to be very careful with the design as we're trying to avoid vernal pools, wetlands, and trying to minimize tree clearing as much as possible fitting onto this backfield. Similar idea in terms of the agrivoltaics and dual use, with the caveat that this site has had historical PFAS contamination. So we are trying to work with the DEP and seeing how we can incorporate any of those sustainability measures that include phytoremediation, something that we can do over the 40-year duration of this facility to improve the PFAS contamination on this site and try to bring this parcel back into agricultural use, or more consistent and more frequent agricultural use, at least. Already have the ISA. We have not been to approval for this one before, but we do have the ISA in hand, which has always been a major delay for a lot of these projects. And we don't have the ASO study, which is the area cluster study on the transmission level. So hopefully, if everything goes according to plan, we can start breaking ground end of the summer or early fall.
Okay, any questions for the applicant? Okay, seeing none, I will open it up to public comment. I'll seek a motion for public comment.
So moved.
All right, do you have a second?
Second.
All right, all those in favor? Okay, opening it up for public comment. If you would like to come forward and state your name, go to the podium, and you have 5 minutes. Okay, seeing none, I will seek a motion to close public comment.
So moved.
All right, do you have a second?
Second.
All right, all those in favor? Okay, public comment is closed. So, any questions, deliberations amongst the board? Do we want to have a discussion with staff?
I didn't mention in the last one, but I do think that it's admirable that they're trying to use as much of the much dual use as possible in these solar arrays. Well, like maintaining the stuff I read about the pollinators, it seemed like a positive incorporation of this plan.
I just have a quick question for staff. I see that we have a note in here about total land area, and once 1% of the ag district has been developed into solar energy generating systems, the planning board must determine whether additional projects will materially alter the district's land use stability. Does this project put us at or over 1%?
No, I can speak to that. I did not go and do the specific calculation, but based on the total amount of approved projects, I'm not 100% sure which ones have been built or not. We're still under the 50% of the total acreage of the 1%. It's really confusing, but so I can't remember. I think it's 200 acres is that 1% threshold. We're below 100 acres with all the approved projects, even if you approve these two tonight. One of the things on my project list when I, in the near future when I have some time, is to go and follow up on all those past approvals and see which ones have actually been built, so that when future projects come in, we can give you a specific total. But we're 100% affirmative that these are under the threshold.
Thank you.
No, and I can appreciate that as well, right? So that's a great question. Then that obviously like telegraphs what questions are going to come down the next time a solar project comes, right? So, yeah, perfect. Okay, any other questions? If not, I would seek a motion.
I make a motion that the proposal meets the requirements of section 60-1277 and 60-1336, and approve the site plan by Super Mill Brook LLC, a subsidiary of Blue Wave Energy, for the construction of a 1 megawatt DC ground-mounted solar energy generating system on approximately 10.91 acres at 371 Penley Corner Road, Tax map lot 137-026, located in the Agricultural and Resource Protection Zoning District. The proposed project has met the standards pursuant to Chapter 60, Article 16, Division 2, Site Plan Review, and Division 3, Special Exception, with the following conditions. No development activity until any bonding or inspection fees are determined by the Auburn Engineering Department. Prior to any blasting activities, applicant shall receive a blasting permit from the City of Auburn Planning, Permitting, and Code Department. Prior to the final electrical approval, the applicant shall submit a final as-built site plan to the fire prevention officer indicating all shutdown mechanisms for emergency response. And prior to the issuance of a building permit, the applicant shall submit an acceptable financial surety.
All right, do you have a second?
Seconded.
All right, any discussion, question of the motion? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor? Okay, motion carries. All right, next item on the agenda is the Salt and Lake Community Center hosting a public hearing for a project for a special exception.
Yes, so this is a change of use application. The applicant is the Salt and Lake Community Center for 29 Hampshire Street, which is in our form-based code district T-5.1. The ordinance didn't have a great definition that fell for what they're proposing at this site, but we found that it best fit under private clubs, halls, and indoor amusement, which is a special use in this zone. They're doing very little to the outside. Mostly what they're doing is, per request of staff, they are making their curb cut smaller than it is, so they're going to come into compliance with what our ordinance would require. And it will be mostly internal renovations. And for conditions of approval, the fire department would like to do an occupancy and fire safety code check before any occupancy is given, and I believe that was the only condition.
Are we all set? Oh, go
I was
ahead.
gonna say one other note. The original submission they gave to the staff did not identify any parking, but we've worked with the applicant to identify a few spots, which was a concern on this site with some of the previous uses from the police department. But the police department has looked at this and they feel comfortable with what the applicant's proposing.
Okay. All right, do we have the
Sorry.
applicant present? Okay.
Hi, I'm Darlene Conant, Director of Salt Lake Community Center. Do you have questions for me? I don't know what I'm...
I mean, typically we just kind of hear, you know, about your project.
Sure. Okay. So we are a community center that works at-risk inner-city children primarily, but we also target their families as well. We have operated in our community for about 5 years with shared spaces. So we've used the basement of a church, we've rented the basketball halls, and we've used the parks primarily as our method of delivering to our generation. So we have a greatly expanded program that we want to offer to our children, and the property would allow us to do that primarily as a walk-in basis, targeting a very centralized area of the city that is in desperate need of places for their kids.
Perfect. Any questions for the applicant?
Maybe just one, where are you currently located?
Yeah, so this will be our first purchase of a building. So we are using the basement of the Auburn Nazarene Church, their fellowship hall we have used for the last 3 years. We have rented when we want to do sporting things. We've rented at the Armory, and then we use the park. So we do a lot of community programming right in the park with programs and adventure camps and things like that in Chestnut Park.
Excellent. Any other questions for the applicant? Okay, seeing none, and seek a motion to open public comment.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, all those in favor? Okay, so if you're a member of the public, you would like to come forward, you have 5 minutes. State your name, your address, and come to the podium. Okay, seeing none, I'd seek a motion to close public comment.
So moved.
All right, do you have a second?
Second.
All right, all those in favor? Okay, perfect. All righty. So any discussion, deliberation, conversation with staff, amongst ourselves?
I guess I have a question for staff. I understand the police department reviewed this and they were okay with the limited parking, but it seems like in addition to the 6 to 9 staff members that will be there at any one time, you're also attracting a lot of people to this building. Is there any concern about pedestrian safety or other safety hazards with the on-street parking that's going to be required?
No, I mean, as Natalie mentioned, the police department has reviewed it. I mean, that's a real concern out there. I mean, but it is an intersection where there are crosswalks established out there. Public Works just redid that section of Hampshire Street out there with nice sidewalks and lighting. So nothing specifically was noted with respect to that. And I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, parking, I mean, they're providing parking, but technically they don't.
Technically, by ordinance, they do not need to they're not required to provide any parking on this site, and they mostly accommodated that because of the concerns that we had.
So they recognize that, or we recognize that while parking isn't necessary, they're going to make some minor improvements out there to overall improve the conditions.
Any other questions for staff? Deliberation, conversation?
I guess just way of conversation, it seems like it's a slow start, but having the space and the layout of the building, it seems like you're going to be able to offer numerous services and activities. So I assume you have quite a plan of growth in related activities.
It's always fun to see nice, different things in front of us, and this feels nice and different, so absolutely. Fantastic.
I make a motion that the proposal meets the requirements of sections 60-1277 and 60-1336 and approve the Salt and Light Community Center for the property located at 29 Hampshire Street, tax map 240-177, within the downtown traditional center of T-5.1 zoning district. The proposed project has met the standards pursuant to Chapter 60, Article 16, Division 2, Site Plan Review, and Division 3, Special Exception, with the following conditions. A, no development activity until any bonding or inspection fees are determined by the Auburn Engineering Department. B, blasting permit in advance of blasting from the City of Auburn Planning, Permitting, and Code Department. And C, prior to the issuance of a certificate of occupancy, the applicant must pass a life safety inspection from the Auburn Fire Department.
Do you have a second?
Seconded.
Any discussion of the motion? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor? All those opposed? Okay, motion carries. Alrighty, so next item on the agenda is public comment. If you are a member of the public and you would like to come forward to speak about anything planning board related, feel free. You have 5 minutes. State your name and address. Okay, seeing none. We'll go on to the next item. So miscellaneous upcoming agenda items.
So, at our next meeting, you will have the capital improvement plan back in front of you for a workshop. The Danville Corner Road project with all their updated material. We have an application for another multifamily structure for Brickyard Commons, which
We've seen that one
have not.
You've seen it
before.
in front of us.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then
a while ago.
other project is going to be a proposed cannabis retail facility.
Is the Brickyard one that we passed and it just didn't break ground in time? Is that the situation, or it seems familiar?
I'm going to be completely honest, I've not looked too deeply into the application yet, so
Yeah, I mean,
I'm
that
not
was
sure
huge, right? They had
if
that-
it's a
all that-
reapproval or if they're adding additional buildings, but something,
I believe it's nearly identical. It's the same location, same number of buildings, I believe.
Was it just because they didn't break ground in the year approval span?
I think so, but we really haven't been through the application to confirm that it's identical, but I think it's essentially the same project coming back because of the expiration.
Okay, and so the next, are we good?
yep, that's what I had.
All right, so the next agenda item is the legal opinion on the validity of the planning board's vote on the election of chair and vice chair. And then the subsection of that is next steps. So I don't know if you want to,
Yeah.
it's in your
so-
packet.
I'd say the biggest notes on this one are the attorney, as you guys requested, we got a legal opinion on your election, and our city attorney came back and did verify that your election was valid and that you did not need to host another one. And that in order to prevent something from this happening in the future, or just to clarify the procedure, he is recommending that we make amendments to our policy, our planning board policy and procedures, which was last updated about a year ago. And we had discussions kind of internally about maybe the best way to approach that, and a subcommittee was something that was brought as an option. And I did include some language in your ordinance on where you're allowed to form subcommittees under the planning board, if that's the route you guys choose to take.
Yeah, so I mean, listen, we have had a lot of discussion, right, about our policies and procedures. If you guys remember, we had separate counsel before. They had some really strong, stringent opinions about our policies and procedures and how we should approach our meetings. We now have new counsel. I have no idea how they would feel about it. We have members of the board I know that have strong opinions about it. We have public that has strong opinions about it. So I feel like a step, and we're open to conversation, is forming a subcommittee to talk about our policies and procedures and how we can best formulate them in a way that we're all, as much as we can be, in agreement moving forward. So that was a suggestion from staff, is forming a subcommittee. If people have other ideas or you'd like to be part of the subcommittee, feel free. I think part of it is so that we can come together as the subcommittee can come together and then obviously bring it back to the planning board versus what's happened in the past where it's been hashed out in miscellaneous items.
No, I think that's a good idea, and I would volunteer to be on a subcommittee.
Okay. I'd like to be on the subcommittee. It's not a shocker to anyone.
I'm not volunteering, but I guess I was thinking that there's new members to the planning board, and I think we had discussed of actually, as a board, again, having, somebody, maybe have some legal review where we're at, and, even for the subcommittee, it might be useful to get a little bit of legal and some discussion from the board itself going in. So almost like a training session for new members, at the same time, kind of introduction to where we're at with procedures that we certainly, governed by now, but, and then maybe give the board able to begin to formulate some ideas and then give that to the subcommittee.
Well, and I'll just say this, I think goes without saying, but I will say it. Anybody who is a part of the subcommittee, it's not like, oh, I'm going to sit down, this is what I want to do. I personally would like to know, like, in the size of our city, like, what is normal, what are people, what are other jurisdictions doing, and how can we meet that or beat that? You know what I mean? It's something that I want to know, like, best practice out there, and I want us to adopt those best practices. So, I mean, obviously that is not done in a silo either. It's done with consultation from people who know the greater scope of this. So, anyone else want to be a part of it?
I'm already on another committee.
Yep. He's not here. I hate to suggest that we do have another attorney on the board that might be.
Works, right? When somebody's
Might
not
be
here,
helpful.
you nominate them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know that you can't have a subcommittee of two. I mean, I think the thought being whoever this.
I mean, I do like
is-
more than just two people.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That I don't love just two people. Not that I wouldn't like to just work with Maureen, but there's a tiebreaker with three. You know what I mean?
Let's revisit it when Ed's here.
Sure. We can do that. Okay, perfect. Alrighty, but we're in agreement with that, so we made some forward motion. All right. At this moment, I would seek a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Do you have a second? All those in favor? Okay, meeting is over. What'd you think? Well, someone's-